All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Dr. Lauren Koch. Lauren, how's it going?
I'm good.
Awesome, wonderful. That's good to hear. Now, can you walk us through your journey from where you started in dentistry to where you are today? What key moments or decisions help shape the direction of your practice that you're going to start?
Journey really started when I was an undergrad and I was applying to dental school. I didn't get in to start. I feel like my dentistry journey has been kind of unexpected turn, not one thing after, we didn't go to dental school right away. We didn't do one thing and next go into practice. Everything has been twists and turns. And I think it's really shaped my journey. I went to graduate school and got a master's before going to dental school, which I think really made dental school feel more valuable to me. After dental school, I decided to move to Chicago and made the choice to work with a DSO, getting myself to Chicago. And that was definitely a pivotal moment where learning what a practice could and couldn't be and what a good practice was and what a maybe not as great practice. I then worked at a couple different offices that just were not managed well, that didn't have the patient flow, that didn't have the culture that I was looking for in an office. And I ended up going to a talk at the midwinter meeting and a talk for new dentists going out. And I really connected with the speaker. And he's talking about what new dentists needed to know, what those dentists need to pay attention to. And I pushed myself, and I'm not a go talk to speakers after presentations kind of person. And I went and I introduced myself and I got his contact information. And I said, how do I find an office that meets my values, that allows me to treat patients with the quality of care that I want to treat patients at, and allows me to connect with my patients in the way that I want to connect with them? And that actually ended up leading me to the associate job that I'm in currently. So I made that connection. We talked, I met up with him, and he ended up offering me a job. I've been with him for 7 years now, and it has been such a great mentorship experience for me. And everything that I've learned from the missteps before finding that opportunity, I had to do accounts receivable myself at an associate position before this. I had to do a lot of things, assisting for myself, assisting like back in dental school. I had to do sterilization. I had to do all of these things that a lot of people haven't had to do in their dental career, but then also working in an environment with a great mentor who has taught me a lot about how to treat patients and how to thrive in a fee-for-service setting as well. We see a little bit of insurance, but mainly fee-for-service, and treat patients with the respect that they deserve, the care they deserve, and all the quality of care that they deserve as well. I'm taking all of that I've learned to this office that I'm opening. That's the exact same feeling I want to give my patients. I want them to feel like they matter, that they're not just another patient walking through the door. They are a part of my office family. So that's really important to me. And so I think all of these little things that I learned along the road have really shaped what this practice I'm opening is going to be.
Nice. Okay. So then, if you don't mind me asking real quick, who's the mentor that you're talking about?
Bill Simon?
Okay, Bill Simon. Is he the associateship you're doing right now? Like the practice you're working for?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, if we can rewind a little bit, you moved to Chicago. Why Chicago in the first place?
So living in Michigan, it's the closest big city, right? So my family lives in Michigan. I wanted a city environment. I've always been gravitated more towards cities, but I wanted something that was close enough that I could see my family. If I wanted to, I could visit them, they could visit me. So I'm about a 4.5 hour drive from them in Michigan. And it felt closer before I had children. And now that I have a family, it feels a little too far, but it's still a good distance.
No, okay, awesome. So then you moved to Chicago and then you started working at a DSO. What were some of the things at the DSO, if you can say, like, there was this one system I loved that I'm taking away from that DSO? And then what were some of the things that you felt you saw and you're like, I never, ever want to do this if I ever own my own practice? I mean, like, were you thinking of practice ownership at that time?
I was not. In dental school, I said I would never own a practice. Beginning of my career, I said I would never own a practice. Like, I had no desire to be a business owner. And as time has gone on, as I've grown, as I've seen different practices run and been in a well-functioning practice, I think that really showed me what I could have on my own. Going to the DSO question, I don't know if I would take anything from to be honest. There was a lot of treating patients like they were a number, not respecting people's time. Waiting room was always full. Patients, it didn't matter if they had an appointment time, just whoever came in first got put the next in line. And so it was definitely not the greatest environment, definitely being pushed to produce more and more, which ultimately ends up decreasing quality of care, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're being told you can only schedule 45 minutes for filling, like how do you have time to do a full quadrant dentistry in 45 minutes to an hour and make sure that you have close contacts and everything is sealed well? And
Yeah.
I don't really know if there were any systems that I think you could talk about the fact that they had monthly meetings, right? Like things like that. They set goals for the practice. I think that's an important thing that every practice should be doing. That's probably the main
The
thing
main
I
thing.
could
Yeah.
take,
No,
yeah,
I
that
get
I
you. I
could take
get
away
you.
from.
Okay. And then from
Yeah.
that point on, you also worked at other associate jobs, right? That you felt it was not managed well, you said, and then some of them didn't have the culture you were looking for. So, to you, what was not managed well specifically? And then what culture were you looking for?
Yeah, I think there was just a lot of poor schedule management. I was working in an office where I'd be scheduled to work and I'd get called the night before saying, hey, you have no patients in your schedule. So you don't have any patients in your schedule. Don't bother coming in tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, how do you pay your student loans when you have no patients in your schedule and you're told to not come in the next day? Same office, something that wasn't managed well. They would tell my assistant if I didn't have a patient to clock out. I know that's not a great thing to,
Mm-hmm.
tell an hourly employer, hey, just something you don't have control over, let's clock out. Culture wise, there was a lot of just immaturity, even in terms of the doctor I worked with, and in terms of silly things, silly things. Um, my assistant was told that she couldn't give me certain hand pieces because I was breaking them, when it turns out that she hadn't been trained properly on how to clean and manage and oil hand pieces.
Mm. That was never communicated to you. It was just communicated to the
No, I did.
assistant.
Yeah. And I had to like eventually be like, what is going on? And talk to the assistant about it. Like, well, I don't know. I was told not to give these to you. And then I ended up bringing it up and it turned out, yeah. That I feel like the culture of not being respectful to peers and colleagues.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Lack of open communication and so much. So then, your associate job you're currently in, why have you stuck with it for 7 years, right? And what
7
have
years.
you learned where you're like, this is extremely unique, incredible. I'm taking this
Mhm.
system to my startup.
The office is run really well. We have 3 of us associates and the owner doctor. We're never there at the same time, but we split the schedule and it works really well. The systems are constantly being improved on. I think the biggest thing that makes that office run so well is there's a like no gossip kind of rule. It's a pretty good sized team and everyone works so well together. Everyone's encouraged to talk openly about things. We have at our monthly meetings every month. And then in those meetings, there's a system where we can appreciate people on the team and give them kudos to, we call it like a peer-to-peer acknowledgement, so that
Mhm.
everyone gets a chance to be recognized for some of the things that they do that go above and beyond for people on the team, for patients. So there's just like this overall atmosphere of camaraderie and collaboration and fun as well. So it's an
Yeah.
environment that I want to bring forward to my own office.
Peer to peer acknowledgement. So that's like every morning or every week or
So with the monthly meeting, so you can go,
monthly.
if somebody does something, you can submit, and then that person gets like a small token, like a $5 Starbucks gift card, so that they get this little bonus for, hey, I did this thing. It's a good like
Yeah.
reward system. Yeah.
The range of that could be like, hey, peer to peer acknowledgments, like, hey, I like the way you were like just joyful this morning. Or it has to be something like in the operational side, like, hey, I appreciated how you emptied 2 to 3 rooms, even though you were busy. And you know what I mean? Kind of a
Mhm.
thing.
Usually more of that kind of thing. Like, hey, you stepped it up and, I was really busy and I'd be like, hey, to one of my hygienists, like, thank you so much for stepping up and cleaning my rooms and anesthetizing for me and jumping in without being asked, right? So that
Mhm.
positive reinforcement. I put one in for one of our hygienists this week because she just saw my 3-year-old who has been very nervous about going to the dentist, and she like
Mhm.
made her super comfortable and just wanted to acknowledge her a little bit more about how great that experience was for my
Yeah.
child as well.
Interesting. Do you ever see in those situations where maybe someone gets left out, or maybe there's one person who's like, all right, Lauren, this is your 30th peer to peer acknowledgement, and everybody else is getting like one and one and one? Does that ever happen?
I don't think so. I know at one point we had an employee who was really good at giving them, and she would make sure to every single month go through and submit them for everyone. So everyone would get it. As time has gone on, it's been a little bit more sporadic that people get given, but I don't think it's been one person more than the other. It's usually pretty even. as to who's
Yeah.
getting them. And one person might get one month and then somebody else gets one or a couple other people. It tends to be kind of widespread.
Yeah, I like that because you're actively looking for things to compliment the person on instead of like issues. You know what I mean? Which issues
Okay.
arise all the time. Now, you mentioned no gossip. What do you think contributes to that?
I think it's really just having a solid team and having the systems to make the day to day go by. And I say systems, right? Like I know that I am completely removed from most of the systems as the doctor, but I think it's just everyone being on top of their tasks and having a solid team. The people who tend to feel like they are more prone to gossip tend to leave the office on their own. They find a different opportunity because that gossip can't thrive or that negative energy can't thrive in the environment that's been created.
Gotcha. So when you mean it can't thrive, does that mean like people are always pointing it out and saying like, "Hey, you're gossiping a lot, Michael. You're doing it too much."
I just don't think it's really brought up. There's
Hmm.
not really much of it to
Bring up, yeah.
that I'd at least observe, and it's just everyone seems to be respectful of everyone else. And I think there also comes to there's some obvious like chain of command, right? There's something's wrong. You're not going and talking to like a hygienist isn't going and complaining to a hygienist. The hygienist is going to either the lead hygienist or the office manager. Everyone knows who they're supposed to report to and who they're supposed to talk about issues to so that things can get addressed. And that helps, I think, wash some of that gossip as well.
Okay, interesting. So then, what made you want to do your own practice, do a startup, since it was never in the books for you?
Yeah, I think it was just like bubblings of over time, knowing that I didn't want to be an associate forever. Like it just,
Mm,
when it came down to it, I wanted to make my own systems, right? I wanted to make my own decisions. I wanted to decide what instruments I'm stocking, what materials I'm stocking. Like I have some of that say and that input, but ultimately it's not my office. Ultimately, I don't get the final say on that. And I think a lot of us dentists are can be type A and want to make our own decisions. And
mhm.
that just over time bubbled up. And I think that I've hit a point where I also feel like I connect with my patients in a way that I didn't used to. I'm 10 years out of school now. I feel confident in talking with patients. I feel like patients accept my treatment plans. I feel like I'm learning as a provider and I'm connecting in a way that I have the fear, but I don't have as much of the fear that opening my own office, opening my own doors is not going to be successful.
Gotcha. So then, what were some key pivotal moments or mindset shifts that gave you more confidence with patients and with treatment planning or treatment accepting?
Yeah, I think that goes to the mentorship with Dr. Simon, Bill Simon, that I work with. Early on, when we first started working together, we did a lot of one-on-one meetings, some check-ins. We talked a lot about emotional intelligence and the way to approach things with patients to help them accept treatment plans, not overwhelm them, and to have that patient-centric language that allows them to feel that you're on their side and to understand that you're only looking out for their best interest instead of trying to sell them something, which obviously, as dentists, are looking
Yeah.
out for a patient's best interest, but they don't always feel that way.
Uh-huh. So then, do you have like a script or something where how do you approach patients and not overwhelm them? I understand the simplicity part where, hey, let's use simple words, right? But sometimes
Mhm.
people still get sticker shocked or, you know what I mean, other ways. So how do you approach patients?
It's very patient centric for me with the conversation, talking to them. A lot of it is just getting a vibe, right? That figuring out what that specific patient is going to respond to. Do they seem like they're money driven? Do they seem like they really just want to get everything taken care of? What are their goals? I do ask them what their goals are. If you have a patient that has a terminal dentition, they want to fix their teeth, but you're like, hey, if they're not at a point where we can do anything for them, having that conversation of what did you anticipate this looking like? What did you come in to this appointment expecting to hear from me? And if they come in and they say, I assume that you tell me that they're all bad and they all need to go, that's one thing versus, well, I thought I might need two fillings. But that conversation get tailored a little bit differently. The other thing is sometimes with those patients that feel like they're going to be overwhelmed, sometimes we'll just say, hey, you've got a lot of things going on. Let me point out a few of these issues, but let's just get you back for the worst thing. Let's get you back, get this tooth that needs to be extracted, removed, this really big cavity that needs to be restored. Let's get those addressed. And then when you get them back and you've created some of that rapport with them, going more in depth on that treatment plan. You've already had that conversation of there's a lot going on. We're going to be talking about a lot more treatment, but let's just work you through step by step how we're going to address this.
I like that question. What were you expecting to hear from me? You're not just getting their words or their thought, but you're getting their emotion behind their thoughts, right? And so now you
Mm-hmm.
can, like you said, you can feel their vibe. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how to attack this head on, or maybe I should chill out a little bit and then just go with the first approach, right? Like you mentioned. So then, right now, Lauren, where are you in your startup process?
We are close to opening. We're building out the office right now. Actually, I have low voltage going in. We have walls up. We have paint on the wall. Flooring is getting ready to be put in. Yeah, we're, I think, expected to be finished in about 3 weeks, assuming everything goes according to plan. And then I need to get all the little details finished. And my goal is to open beginning of December.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, you're like almost there. So then, have you already hired your team?
No.
No. Okay.
I have postings out online. That is my current task at the moment is hiring, which is not something they teach in dental school. That's not something that you really, learn as an associate either is hiring. So I'm trying to weed through applications right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Is it going okay, or is it more like I feel like I'm not seeing anybody?
It's a lot. Yeah. I'm starting out the hiring with one front desk and one assistant. I was originally toying with the idea of just having an assistant jump between front and helping out in the back, but I'm going with a fake it till you make it approach there, where I figure it's going to be better for the patients to see a face of the practice. I don't want them walking into an empty reception area. So I'm going to have two people to start. But yeah, the front desk position has been getting a lot of responses, and everyone seems very qualified. I don't know why all of a sudden there's this huge influx of people who want to work in the front desk of a dental office. I'm hoping that that is a good sign that my office is getting opened in a good area, because people are see like Google like my office and see where it's located and are like, oh, this seems to be a good business to work for. I'm hoping that that's the case. Assistant wise, I've gotten a lot fewer assistants, but that makes sense because I'm not looking to hire someone that hasn't had any assisting experience, just knowing that I am going to need somebody to also help me figure out systems and what they've seen in other offices. And I'd like to not train someone from
Yeah,
scratch as my first assistant. Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So then, right now, currently, what type of practice do you envision? Like, is it PPO heavy, all insurance heavy, fee for service, is it pediatrics? And then your vision for the practice since the moment you decided to open it to now, has the vision changed?
I think the vision has changed slightly. I would love a fee for service practice. Who wouldn't love a spa? Some people out there wouldn't, but most people would love a fee for service practice, right? To not be tied down to insurances and their low payments and ridiculous rules and hoops they make you jump through. But as I'm opening, I am deciding to start with some PPOs. I'm in the process of doing fee negotiations with some PPOs. I haven't decided which ones I will be in network with yet, but the goal is to start out with a handful. I'm using that kind of as part of my marketing budget, is start with PPOs to start and then kind of work my way out of them as time goes on. In terms of kind of the other visions of the practice, I see it as a family practice, which seeing children, I actually wanted to do pediatrics at one point in my career. I actually applied to pediatric residency a couple of times. First time was right out of dental school. It didn't work out. Adding backing to that career path didn't go the direction. And then I applied again in 2019 and didn't get accepted, which I think is one of the best things. That actually I can't imagine having had to move to a different city and tried to start a residency during a global-wide pandemic. So I think that that was the universe telling me like, hey, we need to reassess where your career is headed. But I love seeing children. I really hope to still see a lot of children in the practice that I'm opening. And I kind of want to continue to do a little bit of everything. I don't do implants now. I have a little bit of implant training, but I'd like to get into implants at some point. I want to continue to do some endo extractive. I like to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, dabbling in everything. Awesome, awesome. So then you mentioned your marketing budget. What does that look like?
That is a great question. I'm not actually doing much marketing right now, which is probably foolish, but I'm hoping that a lot of word of mouth and joining the Chamber of Commerce. I try to describe the area that I'm opening my office to people. And it's
Mhm.
this really interesting area of Chicago. There's a stretch in Avondale, Logan Square, Milwaukee Avenue. It's a pretty big street that runs all the way through Chicago. And this stretch has been kind of desolate and falling apart for many years. And I lived a couple blocks of it, south of it during the pandemic. And all the time, like, why are there not more businesses in this area? What is going on? This is such a great area of the city. It's not that far from the train. So public transit, there's all these families, there's a lot of young professionals. What is going on with this area? And apparently the alderman in Chicago had that same exact thought and held this open house for small businesses, and just all of the landlords had the places open. People could come in and take a look, and really focused on revitalizing this stretch. And so there's all of these small businesses going, and it's this up and coming, booming area. My hairdresser is across the street from where my office is opening. She was telling me about how everyone's been talking about, oh, what business is going in that spot. Everyone's talking. So I'm hoping that I can just word of mouth going and introducing myself to all of the businesses in the area. I mentioned I have kids a few times. My children are in daycare, preschool in the area. I'm hoping to get that out. I know people in the community, even though it's Chicago, I've got community here. So I feel like hopefully I can drum up some business there and see how that goes and then reassess.
Awesome. So you're doing a lot of ground marketing right now, right? Where you're going to try to
Yeah.
go out and make things happen. So, with that being said, you're like a couple weeks from opening. So then from that point on, what have been some of the best companies you worked with or partnered up with, and then some of the ones that just didn't vibe with you?
I don't want to like throw anyone under the bus vibing wise. The companies that I ended up working with that I continue to work with have been, I chose them for a reason. The build out that I'm doing is with a design build company, On Point. They're Chicago based. They've taken me from everything from architectural plans to permitting to design, and they're the ones building the space as well. I know that there can be a little bit higher of a cost associated with doing all of that, but it felt like having someone hold my hand every step of the way was more my speed of things. I wanted an office that was built well and thought out well, and having people that are used to working with dental professionals that knew all the things to look for was really important to me. So I've been very happy with working with them. They've been a really good company to work with there. I've been working with Benco for my equipment, and I've really liked the reps that I've been working with from Benco. The product rep actually walked the floor with me at the midwinter meeting, which was really helpful and has been very cognizant of my budget, but also knowing that I want quality for the amount of money that I spent. And I haven't felt oversold at any point. It's been, hey, that's a really great product, but that doesn't fit your budget. Let's find something that's comparable that I think you'd be happy with. So that's been a really great experience there. The company that helped me find my space, Joe Rossi and Associates, I believe, JRA, I worked with Dominic there, and he was great to work with and helping negotiate the space. That's a daunting aspect, and he did really well with getting me some good terms on the lease and some good TI.
What I wanted to ask you, the ones where the companies, I guess, just didn't work with you, right, somehow throughout your startup phase, why? What was the main reasons that you feel like you guys dropped the ball, or maybe, hey, it changed up, or what happened?
A lot of it was a lot of gut feeling, just trusting my gut. If a company didn't feel responsive, if they felt like they were trying to sell me on something that didn't feel accurate, kind of the things that I'm sure patients feel when they come into the dental chair, right? Is this person just trying to sell me something? Do they have my best interest in mind? Are they communicating in a way that matches what I'm desiring? There was a lot of that. I wanted companies that just felt like they had my best interest in mind, and that they were part of kind of the team that I was building and not just trying to sell me something.
So then you mentioned budget a lot when it came to, I guess, products, but also supplies. What was the budget for that? And which chairs did you go with in supplies?
For chairs, I went with DCI Series 5 chairs. One of the offices I had been in recently that was sold actually had a flood, and we ended up getting the DCI Series 4 chairs. So I got to see them firsthand. I was like, these are actually pretty nice chairs. I wanted something that was sleek and modern looking as well. It kind of fit in with the modern vibe of my office. So the other chairs that I was looking at, the mid-mark chairs and the Belmont chairs, kind of all the things in the same budget range, just didn't have that sleek vibe that I was looking for. I'm currently using forest chairs, which are nice, but they have a lot of weird little kind of things about them that drive me insane. I believe we got them in 2021. So I've worked with them for 3 years, and I don't think I want to continue working with these chairs for the next 20 years, 25, however many years I'm going to be in practice.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And then, so how much was the budget for all that?
For equipment, I was trying to stay under 200, which I think that I was able to stay. I am the worst person to ask about numbers because it went in a spreadsheet and then I forgot about it. I'm either going to be an awful business owner or a great business owner, because I'm either going to be awful because I'm not paying attention to everything every minute of the day, or I'm going to be great because I'm not stressing about it once I've made the decision and gotten past.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that a lot. Interesting. Okay.
I could go back and look at the sheet and I know that all the numbers balanced out and I was happy with the decision that I made at the time.
If it balances out, then perfect. I completely understand. So then, one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, Lauren, is throughout this process, throughout the moment you decided that you wanted to do your own business, your own startup, till today, what's been some of the biggest failures or setbacks or struggles you've had to encounter?
Since the moment I thought of it would be my husband's support. Love him so much, but that was a really hard struggle getting him to buy on to this being a good idea. He is 100% on board with it and is excited about it now, but it took a good chunk of time for him to wrap his head around, okay, we're taking on the responsibility and the debt of a business. And what does that mean for our family? How do we make this work? So that was really hard for him. I had been very sure when I finally made the decision, this is what I want to do. I know the next steps. I want to talk to the people who can help me figure out the next step. His uncertainty cast a little bit of internal doubt that I had to overcome as well. And then he figured it out. He got on board and he is my biggest cheerleader now. So much so that he is a designer and he's doing my branding, my website. He's part of the design team.
Yeah, he's excited about it. Interesting. So then how did you convince him, persuade him, or where was the pivotal moment where you're like, you got it, kind of a feeling?
I had a lot of conversations with him about, all the things that we hear about. The banks wouldn't be willing to give me money if they thought that I was going to fail, right? Like having those conversations, talking about how the goal of having this office is for us to continue to make money, to have autonomy, and also figure out how to have my schedule fit what our family needs. A big struggle as an associate has been how to manage our family needs with the hours that are being offered to me as an associate, because that's the hours that the office is open, right? Figuring out how does that work? How does scheduling work in terms of my kids don't have school this day? What am I going to do? I'm lucky to have a spouse that works from home, that works in a career that he can take the kids or take a day off if they need it off, but I can't have him shoulder 100% of that. It's not fair for either partner in a relationship to take on that entire burden. Even right now, I'm planning on structuring my hours and my time off in ways that work for our family and not just also, once again, might be an awful business owner for making decisions this way, but I think my success will happen because I'm putting my family first.
Interesting. Yeah. So throughout this process, then the moment you started making moves, like the loan, right, and everything like that, you started looking for.
Yeah.
How has all this affected your personal life? Do you foresee, hey, I see balance in the future, like after December, or how has it all affected your personal life?
There was that like little bit of tumultuousness initially, right, when we were trying to decide if was actually happening. But I think it's ultimately made my personal life better. There's been a lot of feelings of like hopefulness, of feeling like peace. There's been a lot of stress with the process, but there's been a lot of, okay, I don't need to be frustrated about this one thing because at some point I'll be able to make that decision myself in the future. Let me learn from, we ran out of a supply at the office, therefore I'll figure out a system to make that not happen in the future. So I don't come home as stressed from the office as much because there's been that weight lifted from my shoulders. I made the decision back in August to cut down my hours as an associate, spend more time working on the startup. It coincided with Bill Simon owned two offices and he sold one of them, coincided with his selling of one of the practices. But I decided to cut back my hours and only work a couple of days a week, which has also, I think, helped me be more present for my family and also show me how important it is or when I open my office to be present with my family and not just be working all the time. A weird thing for a woman to say. A lot of times we're usually the ones that are at home more often. And if you're looking at traditional gender roles, but I was working a lot and not seeing my family a lot. And I don't want to go back to that. I want to find balance and keep having balance.
That's a common, just with anybody, even like, I think they call it mom guilt, but then there's also dad guilt, right? Where you're like, just, hey man, I should be with my children right now, spending time with them, doing all these things. But then sometimes you are with your children for a long period of time. And then you're kind of like, if I can just get 5 minutes alone, I can do this, right? It's a balance.
Recently, I think just in this process, somehow, I don't know if it's just been the mental shift of opening the business. I've somehow gotten really good at just disconnecting. Okay, I'm going to work on this with the business. I think it's being at home, working from home on these days that I have off and working on all of the things that go on the business. Okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to put my computer away and be present and just disconnect. And I think that setting myself up for, let me actually prioritize and compartmentalize when the business is open. Obviously, there's going to be things that happen off hours that are going to need to be managed and taken care of. But I think that it's been actually really good for my mental health. And this could all change in December when the office opens. But I'm hoping to continue some of that.
No, that's really good.
Mentality.
So what advice can you give to an associate right now looking for a really good associateship?
I think a lot of it is networking. It came to the realization that a lot of the job postings that are out there are at the bottom of the barrel. Not saying they all are, but at least in Chicago, it was the jobs that were still available after people had exhausted their networking resources. So I think that networking, not being afraid to go up to a presenter at a meeting and talk to them if you think that you have that kind of connection, introducing yourself. I'm part of the Chicago Dental Society, so I think organized dentistry can really create some good connections there in terms of mentorship and connections and talking to dentists that may be looking for an associate or getting to know other dentists the same age as you because they might have an associate position open in their office. So just trying to create as big of a network as possible so that you can know what's out there.
And then the last question, what advice can you give to an associate thinking to do a startup or wanting to do a startup?
Go for it. I say this as someone who has not opened their startup yet and has no patience through the doors yet, but I think go for it. If it's what makes sense to you. I know some dentists that have done some practice acquisitions lately, and those don't seem any less fraught with issues. So I think that no matter which direction you go, there's going to be the struggles. There's going to be the things that come easier. And I think if that is what you want to do with your career, go for it.
Awesome, Lauren. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, I can be found. My minor social media presence as I'm starting to open my office is Avondale Dental Studio. I'm on Instagram, and avondaledentalstudio.com is our website. Hopefully I'll get into social media. I'm hoping to hire someone who has some social media experience so that we can get that going.
Awesome. So that's all going to be in the show notes below. So you can definitely go check that out. And Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you.